Hey guys, today in this tutorial I'm going to be teaching you how to set up a basic character controller, and then with that the second part will be how to make a 4-player split screen simple platforming game. Alright, so to get started here we're going to go ahead and build a basic scene. So I'm going to change my settings of my main camera. Let me zoom in here for viewing purposes. So I'm going to change the projection of the main camera to orthographic. Set the size to 10, and then set the position to 0, 2.4, and -10. Alright, now that's all good. Go ahead and add a directional light to this scene to light up your scene at runtime. So go to Game Object, Light, Directional Light, and that should do it. And next we have to add a floor to the game. So we're going to go Game Object, 3D Object, Cube. Going to name that Floor. Come on. Gonna name that floor. Set the position to 0, 0, and then -5. And set the scale to 20.5 and 2. Alright, so that should be good. And so next we're going to make a little platform. So go to Game Object, 3D Object, Cube. Rename that platform. Alright, set the so it's set to -5, so let's go ahead and just drag it up a little bit. There, that way it's floating. So we're going to set the scale to, how about 3.3 and 1. Alright, so that looks good. Oh, actually it looks, oh, there we go. Alright, the 3. Alright. So now that we have our little scene set up, we're going to make a player object. So we're going to go to Game Object, 3D Object, Sphere, and name this Player1. Alrighty. And so we're going to set the position of Player1 to 0, 2, -5, and the scale is fine. So now that we have our object, we need to attach a character controller. So we have to go to Component, Physics, Character Controller. Notice how it pops up in the inspector window, so it should be good to go. And after doing that, we have to attach a script that allows us to control the character controller. So I already have mine set up here in my scripts folder. So in your assets folder, go ahead and make a new folder, name it scripts, and then inside of that, make a new script, go to create C# script, and then name it Player1 controller. Alright, so let's open it up here. Alright, now that we have our script opened up, after double clicking on it, yours is blank, so I'm going to take you through each and every little bit. So first, making sure that the name of my public class lines up to the name I gave the script itself inside of the scripts folder. So it'd be Player1 controller. We have to declare our character controller name. So I named it controller1 here. And then we have to declare and initialize our variables for the object itself. So we have public float move speed, jump speed, push power, and vector3 movement, which allows movement inside of a 3D space. So inside of void start, we need to initialize our character controller. So controller1 is equal to get component character controller, and you finish it off just like that. And so now inside of void update, we're actually going to be assigning the movement commands. So for the right direction, for the movement for Player1, I'm going to be using WASD. And so for the right direction, we have to assign a button listener. So we do that through input.getKey, keycode dot, and then whatever key that you would like the computer or Unity to listen for. So I set the right direction to D, and so when this equals true, we're going to translate our object to the right, multiplied by the movement speed variable, multiplied by the computer's delta time. And multiplying it against with the computer's delta time allows for a much smoother movement and a much slower movement, and it improves the game overall. So for the left direction, the code is almost identical. We assign another button listener, set the key code to A for left, and then transform vector3.left, because obviously I want to go left. So for jumping, it's a similar little bit of code. We assign a button listener to W, but we also have to make sure that controller1 is grounded is equal to true, meaning that it's not or meaning that it is touching the ground, or the bottom of it is touching a surface. So if all this code equals true, then we set our movement.y to the jump speed. So next, we are going to add a little bit of weight and gravity to the scene, and so with this bit, we have if controller1.isGrounded is equal to false, meaning if it's in the air, movement.y is equal to itself plus itself of physics.gravity.y times the time.delta time. And don't forget to include this last little bit of code right here. If you don't, basically the gravity will not work. So this last bit of code right here isn't essential to the tutorial. It just adds a little something to the game. What it does is allow any object with a character controller attached to it to push and move any other object with a rigid body attached. So go ahead and get this in there if you want. Just make sure that it's outside of the void update function, which ends right here, but still inside of the public class itself, meaning like the whole script. So alright, now that that's all in there, I'm going to go ahead and save the script. Zoom out here, go out, so we have our script. So to attach a script to an object, you click the script, you can drag it onto the object, into the scene, drag it into the empty gray space in the inspector view, or drag it onto Player 1, I believe, in the hierarchy view. So I'm going to go ahead and attach it. Notice how it popped up in the inspector window. So let's see, I'm going to go ahead and add that rigid body object. So I'm going to make a sphere. I'm going to call it, let's say, rolling ball. And so now I'm going to go to the, I'm going to attach the rigid body to the ball itself. So go to Component, Physics, Rigid Body. So it should be good to go. And now we have to adjust our, like the position of the actual ball itself. So just making sure it's on the -5 z-axis so it all lines up, as you can see here, so like the balls will collide correctly. So leaving it there, that's good to go. Let's go ahead and before we run the scene, I'm going to embed the player camera into, or the main camera into Player 1. That way it will follow the player and track him around as he or she moves throughout the scene. So I'm going to rename main camera to Player1 cam, alrighty, and then I'm going to embed Player1 cam into Player 1. Notice how it has that little triangle now to show that it's embedded. So let's zoom out, let's run the scene and see what happens. Alright, so we have our ball here, and so with the WASD I can move it around, I can jump in the sky, and I can push this ball right here, and I can also jump off the edge. So now that that's done, go ahead and repeat that process. I'll take you through that. So I'm going to make a, really quick, going to make a cube, going to name him Player2, and alright, so we have to make a new script here. Going to go to C#, name it Player2 controller. Alright, and next, we have to get the correct script into this, I'm going to copy and paste the existing code for Player 1 and just paste it right over everything for Player 2. Normally I wouldn't recommend this from a programming standpoint, but there is very little, the two scripts are almost identical, so there's very little that can go wrong in terms of debugging. So we're going to rename the public class to Player2 controller, rename our character controller to controller2. So rename or fix the name inside of the void start function to controller2. And now inside of void update, just switch all the names over to controller2. Just like that. And we're done. So there's nothing that needs to be changed inside of onController collider hit function. So we should be good to go. Go ahead and save the script. Let me zoom out. Alright, so I got my cube. Alright, Player 2. So I'm going to make sure that Player 2 is on the platform. Set the Z to -5. I'll just put him right over here. So we have to add the character controller. So I'm going to go to Component. With the Player 2 selected, Component, Physics, Character Controller. Notice how it pops up. And then I'm going to drag the script onto Player 2. Notice how that pops up. And so before we run it, I'm going to go ahead and change the movement commands to, let's see, I have WASD already selected, so I'm going to do G, J, and Y. So for right, let's do J. For left, let's do G. And for jump, let's do Y. Alright. So go ahead and save that. And that's all that's really required of you. So, whoops. Alright, so now I can move my sphere. I can move my cube. However, I don't have split screen yet, so I'm going to go ahead and take care of that right now. Alright, so now that we've made our cube, we have to make another camera for player 2, so I'm going to go ahead and duplicate the player 1 cam, embed that in player 2, and then rename it player 2 cam. So now, because I duplicated it so it has all the same features, or all the same, settings and everything, so it should be good to go. One thing we have to change, though, is because the camera is duplicated, it is in the same spot, so we're going to have to move it over to where it lines up with the cube in the camera preview. So I'm going to drag it over, and that lines up pretty well. It's nice and centered. Alright, good to go. So the last step for doing this is changing the Viewport Rect, which is right here in the inspector window, to something that allows both cameras to be seen. So if we're doing a vertical split screen game, I'm going to leave the X at 0, the Y at 0, change the width to 0.5 and the height to 1, and I'm also going to change the camera size, which isn't a requirement, but it just makes it look better when we're changing the the different multiplayer styles. So I'm going to leave the size at 12, and for the player 2 camera, so for the other camera, set X to 0.5, set Y to 0, and the width and height both to 1, and then make sure to change your size. So now, let's go ahead and run the scene, and we should have 2 screens. Holy cow. Something must have went wrong. Oh, yeah, there it is. Okay. Make sure there's no typos. That's a big one. So here we go. So now I have 2 objects that are both centered in the screen and can move around, push the ball, and they can move independently of each other inside the game. Alright, now that we've got our vertical split screen set up, I'm going to go ahead and walk you through horizontal. So we'll just be changing, it's just a matter of changing the Viewport Rect again. So in player 1 camera, let's go back to the inspector. And for the horizontal, let's leave the X at 0, the Y at 0.5, the width at 1, and the height at 0.5. And then go ahead and change the size to 6, which allows for, because we have more room now to look through the camera, so it's a better size. So for the player 2 camera, go back, change the width to 0, the Y to 0, the width to 1, and the height to 0.5. Change the size to 6. And we should be good to go. Let's go ahead and run the scene here. And now, so I have a horizontal split screen game and 2 objects that I can do whatever I want with 2 different hands. Alrighty. So lastly, we're going to be setting up our 4-player split screen. So basically, go ahead and repeat the steps of this tutorial. Just make two more objects. Go to Game Object, 3D Object, and make 2 more. Duplicate 2 more cameras and embed them into those objects, and then repeat the process for the scripts, changing the names to Player 3 controller, Controller 3, all throughout the code, and also Controller 4 and Player 4 controller. So just for the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and do that outside of this tutorial, and then I'll come back when it's all done. Okay, now I've got my 4 character objects all set up. I've got player 4, player 3, 2, 1, and you have to assign new controls to each one. And so with all that being said, make sure you have the character controller along with the script attached to all of your objects. Let's finish this tutorial up. For the comprehensive 4-player split screen Viewport Rect list is as follows. So for player 1 cam, set the size to 12, or actually set it to 8. 8's just a little bit better. So for the X, we want 0, we want 0.5, we want 0.5 width, and 0.5 height. And so for player 2 camera, let's set the size to 8, set the X to 0.5, 0.5, set the width to 0.5, and the height to 0.5. And for the third player, let's set the X to 0, 0, 0.5, 0.5, and set the size to 8. Very repetitive process, unfortunately. Player 4 cam, set the size to 8. Set the X to 0.5, the Y to 0, the width to 0.5, and the height to 0.5. Alright, so now that all of our Viewport Recs are set up, all of the cam and the controls, all the characters, everything is set up, let's run the scene, and now we have 4 players just kind of dancing and going crazy around in the scene. And so that's, yeah, there you go. That's how you do it. So I will be including the Viewport Rect input requirements in the comments section, so you don't have to watch this video and find the specific spot for everything if you already know how to set up the game. So thanks for watching, and I hope it helped.